Hello everyone, welcome to Dell Boomi training by Genomics. In today's session, I'm going to show you how to build a file transfer service in Dell Boomi. And before we get started with the integration, well, let's try to understand the use case. Assume that you're doing an implementation for a manufacturing client. And yes, the manufacturing client has an internal warehouse management system. Let's call it application A. We do have items in this WMS system which get updated quite frequently. And this application A, or internal warehouse management system, it keeps generating those item CSV files. And these CSV files would have that updated item information. So periodically, once in an hour or once every 4 hours, the WMS system is going to generate the files with item updates on it. And it's going to, WMS system is going to place those item CSV files in SFTP server 1. And you can call that as a source SFTP server. And this updated item information should be made available to a third-party shipping application, maybe like an OTM or any other third-party application, because this system also needs the updated item information. But can we go to client and ask them to expose the SFTP server where WMS system is writing the files to the third-party system space? Client might not be okay with it because there could be a lot more or lot many other sensitive files sitting in the SFTP server 1. So client might not be okay to expose this SFTP server or give access of this server to a third-party system, or shipping systems or external applications. Then what's our only other option that we have? We go back to application B and ask them, boss, do you have access to any other SFTP server? So they say that, yes, Prasad, I have access to this SFTP server 2 or a target SFTP server. So if you can place the files in this target SFTP server, I'll be able to pick them up and I'll process them at my end. So you would run into many scenarios like this in real time, guys. Like you have source application writing the files to one location, whereas a target application expects the files to be in a different location. So which brings us to the actual use case. So how do you achieve this use case in Dell Boomi? The client is using Dell Boomi as the main integration product. So we're going to build a file transfer service or a scheduled service in Dell Boomi. And yes, we go to SFTP server 1, list on the files. So we go to the server 1, pick up the files from there, and we're going to transfer it to SFTP server 2. So let's see how to build that integration now. So I'm in a Dell Boomi account here, Dell Boomi platform, and I'm going to create a new component here, process. And I want to create this integration with a start shape as no data, because I want to schedule this orchestration after I create it. Or I can also start it with a connector as well, using an FTP connection. Also, I can start it. SFTP also, I can start it. Let's do it as a no data. Let's build the integration with a no data shape. I go ahead and click on OK. And the first thing that I need to do is connect to the source SFTP server so that I can go there, search for the files, pick them up, and I can transfer them to the server 2. Okay. So for this integration process, I need to create I need to create two connections. One connection to talk to source SFTP server and another connection to talk to the target SFTP server. So let's go ahead and add them in. So you click on, so this is how our process is going to look like. So I started this process with no data. I click on a plus icon and I can add a connector here. So I go ahead and search for SFTP connector here. Remember, a file server can be of two types, FTP and SFTP. So depending on which type of a file server your client is using, you need to pick and choose appropriate adapter. So SFTP is slightly more secure than FTP. Go ahead and pick up SFTP and configure it. I'm going to call this as source FTP server. And I need to create a connection first of all to talk to the source SFTP server. And I would create it as source SFTP connection. And we need to enter the SFTP host port username and password. So you would be getting these details from a client. So client would share the source and the target SFTP credentials with you. So if you're practicing it as an individual and you're just exploring Dell Boomi and you don't have client to provide these logins, you can go ahead and search for FileZilla and Google. And this vendor gives you an option to install SFTP server on your machine. So if required, you can install the SFTP server on your machine directly. And you can use that, you can connect to that particular server to practice this use case. Just in case you don't have any SFTP logins with you, you don't have to stop this use case. You can still go ahead and install the FileZilla server on your local machine. So this is like installing a SFTP server on your machine. And while you install it, it would prompt you to enter a password in one of the screens. Do remember the password because you would need that when you connect to it. Okay. And after you install the server, you would have the SFTP host username and password. Try to log into it. And let me enter my SFTP credentials here. I pause the screen share because I don't want to expose it. I've entered the SFTP host port username and password. You can go ahead and click to set here, and you can enter the password here. So you won't, the other user won't be able to see what you're entering here, and click on apply. And after you click on apply, remember the password would be stored in an encrypted manner here, and you can go ahead and save and close this. So all we try to do was we have created a source SFTP connection. So if your client is not sharing a SFTP host or the username and password, instead, if they share a private key, then you can go ahead into the SSH options and you can upload that SSH key here. Go ahead and save and close. So we created a source SFTP connection. And what exactly do I want to do? I want to get the files from a source SFTP server, and I need to transfer them to the target SFTP. So I say get, I would leave that as get here, and I need to create an operation here. And what do we call this as? Get files from source SFTP. Give it a meaningful name. And you want to do a get operation. And let me connect to the same SFTP server from WinSCP here. WinSCP or FileZilla, you can use either of these tools. So these are basically tools that would help you to connect to the file servers, FTP servers. So if you don't have this, again, similar to how you install SFTP server here from FileZilla, you also have an option to install SFTP client as well. So if you go ahead and install this SFTP client, you will see a shortcut like this appearing on your desktop, and you just have to open that FileZilla software. And once you open that, yes, you can go into the connections tab and create a new connection. I do have a connection created here with a source SFTP server logins, and I'm going to get connected to it. Now, why am I getting connected to this? Because after we build this integration, we want to test it. And yes, since we don't have a client or a WMS system to place the item CSV files in server 1, I would connect to the SFTP server. I would create the required folder structure and place in few files there, sample files. So I go to UG folder. I would create a new folder here. I call it as, Geeks TBI. Or whatever folder structure that I need for the sessions, I'm going to put them into this folder. So I would create a new folder, call it as file transfer process. And within this, I want to create two folders here. Input. And I would also create output folder in the same location. I'll talk about why I'm doing it in some time. So let's go to the input folder. Assume that this is a source SFTP server, and our WMS system is placing the item CSV files here. Okay. Now, what is it that we need to do from an integration process? We need to transfer these files from this location. So assume that this is a source SFTP server. We need to connect to the source SFTP, come into the folder, pick up these files, and transfer it to the target. Now, yes, I already connected to this particular SFTP server. I established a connection earlier. Now I'm trying to get the files from SFTP server. So I need to mention from which directory the files need to be pulled. So I'm going to mention this directory path. And I also need to mention a file filter. Is I want to search for a files which match a specific naming convention or which match a pattern. So if I say items1.csv, what would happen, guys? Only this file would be picked up and transferred. And if you say, instead of mentioning a specific file name, if you say start, then yes, the file name has to start with items and the extension has to be .csv, but after items keyword, anything can come in there. So because I'm basically searching for a files which match this pattern in the input location. I'll go ahead and save and close this. Click OK. And this is going to go to the target source SFTP server and it's going to pull the files. Now, what do I want to do? I want to send the files to the target location. So I'm going to use SFTP again. And I would configure a target SFTP connection now. I'm going to create a new connection because remember, I need to connect to a different SFTP server altogether because this is where I need to place the files, which are, this is a server accessible to application B, and this is where I need to place the files. So you go to a second SFTP connection, and I'm going to call this as target SFTP connection. And unfortunately, I've got access to only one SFTP server, guys. I've got access to only one SFTP server. So I would enter the same SFTP server login details in this connection also. But in real time, remember when you create the target FTP connection, you would be entering a different SFTP host. Okay, but since I've got only one SFTP server with me, I would connect to the same SFTP server and I would transfer the files from input to the output folder. But please note, guys, in real time, the output folder will not be sitting in this SFTP server. The only reason I created it in this SFTP server is I don't have a second SFTP server. That's the only reason why I created the folder here. So I would go ahead and create the required folder structure. Sorry, I would go ahead and get connected to it. Of course, the screen share, I'm going to enter the connection details and I'll share my screen back. I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to apply the password. So I'm now connected to the target SFTP connection. I'm going to click on save and close. And what exactly do I want to do in this one? I want to do a send operation. So whatever files I'm getting from a source SFTP server here, from a specific folder, I want to send it to the target. And what operation do I want to do? I want to do a write operation. I want to do a write operation, like write files to SFTP. Okay, now what exactly are we going to do now? So we say write files to SFTP, and we can mention what actions do we want to perform. So in which directory we want the files to be placed. So yes, I want the files to be placed in the output location. I want the files to be placed in the output location. And you have a SFTP put operation here. So since you're writing a file, since you're going to write a file to this location, there is a fair chance that this items1.csv might already exist in this location. So if a file already exists in that location with the same name, what exactly do you want to perform? Do you want to create a file but generate a unique file name, putting one at the end and incrementing a sequence? Or do you want to overwrite the file? Or do you want to append to the existing file content? So if you already have a file, open this and the new file that I'm trying to transfer, right, append the content to it, or overwrite it, or error out the process. So depending on the requirement that you get from a client, you can choose appropriate option. So I'm going to say overwrite if the file exists. So if the file already exists in the location, it would be overwritten. And I want the files to be moved to this particular location, the output location. And I'm going to hit save and close. Click on OK. And I'm going to stop the process. Again. And you can click on this to align, to get the alignment right. So if you hit this icon, say for example, if these are all in zigzag mode in the pane or in the screen, you can go ahead and click on arrange, and that would put everything, that would arrange the icons within the process. Now you go ahead and save this. And after we hit the save button, we go ahead and we want to test the process now. And before we test the process, one important point that you need to note, guys, when you are doing a write file operation, you need to set the file name. So with what name? So you're going to pick up a file and you're going to write it to the target, but you need to set the file name. With what name the file needs to be written to the target location. So I'm going to pull this to the side, and I'm going to say set properties, and this action would help me to set a file name. With what name the file needs to be put in a target directory. So you say set properties. I'm going to pull it down so that it looks a bit neat and clean, and I would link it. Now, what is a property that I want to set? I want to set a file name property. So I say document property connector, and I go to SFTP. I would say file name. So this is a property that I want to set. On the target, I want to set the file name. And what value do I want to set? I want to again select process property, sorry, the connector. What I can do is I can go ahead and assign a static value if I want to keep it simple, or I can also assign a unique value as well if I want. Okay, so that would, or you can say sequential. So when you use options like this, and what would happen? It would generate a sequential value, or it would assign a static value for it. Okay, or else you can go to the document property. I'm going to go to the connectors. I would select SFTP connector. I would select the file here. Click OK. And I'm going to select the SFTP file name. So whatever is the file name that I'm picking up from here, so whatever is the file name that we have here, so that file name I'm going to assign to the write file operation. So let's go ahead and see if this works. So I go ahead and save this, and I can click on this to get the icons arranged. And we can go ahead and do a quick test by hitting this icon. So I've got, yes, let me go ahead and delete this file as well. I'm not sure what option I selected here when we are writing the files. What's the option that we selected? We selected overwrite if file exists, right? So even if you have that file in here, that's fine. So in the input location, I've got 3 files. And after I run this particular service, we should be able to see these 3 files move to the output or placed in output. So let's see if that works or not. I'm going to run the service now. And when you have to test the service, you need to select something called as an atom. And in a different session, I'm going to talk more about what this atom is. In short, it is basically a runtime engine. For a process to run, it needs to have a runtime environment, and atom just provides that. So if you don't have an atom created yet, because if you have created a new Dell Boomi account, you might probably not have an atom created. So you can go ahead and create a new item. You can deploy it on your local machine, or you can deploy it in cloud, and you can use it to test your integration process. So I'm going to select my local item here, and I click on OK. And you would be able to see that the integration started coming now. And you do have an option to cancel it if you want. And this would be enabled after 30 seconds. After a few seconds, if the process is still running, you would see, I don't see an option now, but this button gets enabled after a few seconds, so that if the process gets stuck and it's running forever, you can go ahead and test the execution. Okay, let's go ahead and see. So it's trying to pull the files, and it has also set the properties, and it has also written the file up to the SFTP location, and the process completed successfully. And at each and every step, you can see what is going on. So for example, if I go to the source SFTP connection, you can go into source shape data, and you would be able to see, if you go into connection data, you see how many files did it pull? 3 files, because we've got 3 files in source, and it has set the property as well, and it has also written the file to the target as well. In the target folder also, it placed the files with the same name. Now, if I go back into the output folder, remember we didn't have any files earlier. Now, if I go into the input folder, you see I'm in input folder now, and I could see the 3 files transferred. So this is how easy it is to achieve integration scenarios, not just like this. Pretty much any scenario that you want to achieve, you can easily achieve them by building a process like this in Dell Boomi. So what did we see? What did we do in this session? We've seen how to transfer files from one SFTP location to another by building a scheduled flow. So we created this flow and we did the unit testing. It's working as expected. And what's the next step, guys? Our next step would be that you go ahead and deploy this process. And after the process deployed, you can go ahead and schedule it as well. So I'm going to get into all of those details in a different session later on. Thank you.